Well, when we think of reading and writing, we have to analyze the skills involved and help the child to master one skill at a time. In writing, you have to know your sounds of your letters. You have to be able to make the shape of the letter. You have to be able to use a pencil skillfully. And then you have to be able to spell, see, before you can put your thoughts on paper. Now, it does take a little while to master the use of a pencil, just as when you begin any new craft, you have to begin by mastering the use of the tools and learning the handling of the tools before you can achieve anything in that particular craft. Now, one of the difficulties today is that the children are being given pencils to scribble with long, really, before they should be using a pencil. And nobody worries very much to see that they use the pencil in the right way. And it's absolutely essential that any new tool the child is first taught to handle the tool properly. You see, if you hold a pencil lightly with your first two fingers, thumb, then you can move your wrist in any position very easily and get any strokes in any direction, you see, with quite a relaxed hand. But if the child is allowed to hold the pencil in this way, and many of them come to school even at 5 still doing that today, then you see you can only use your pencil rather awkwardly in one of two directions, very stiff movements, and you can never do anything skillful either from the point of view of writing or drawing. When I look round my class of adults, I nearly always find most peculiar ways of holding the instrument. There's one girl who holds it rather like this, and very tightly, not in this relaxed fashion. And if a child comes to school holding and using the pencil the wrong way, it's going to take the teacher a very long time to retrain him. It's very easy to teach a child to use any tool the right way from the beginning, but to have to do this remedial work of getting him to change a habit which is formed takes a long time, whether it's holding his spoon at dinner time or using a pencil. This primitive grasp the children should be losing soon after a year. And it only means that the adult has to take the trouble to show them how to hold the pencil or how to hold the spoon, whatever. So when you get children in the Montessori school, if you give them a pencil from the beginning, you make them hold it the right way. And if a child is holding it the wrong way when he comes, you will have to really keep an eye on that child. And every time he uses a pencil, you will have to go down several times and change the position for him, because he reverts. Once he forgets, he reverts to his old habit. The sooner you break that bad habit, the better. Now, when we think of the preparation for reading and writing, one of the exercises we will give him, we're going to train those different aspects separately. So one thing we will do is to train him to use a pencil well, so that when he's using a pencil really easily, then he will not find it difficult to write. And we want an exercise that will be interesting to the child, which will really, he will practice for a great deal for pleasure. He will enjoy it. In the old days, you did the same thing, but in a very boring way. You had books with lines of straight lines. You had to do all these straight lines or slanting lines, or what we call pot hooks, And it's terribly boring. You had to be almost forced to finish one line, didn't you? Some of you had them. Yes. Or those awful dittos where you join up dots, Right at that. So what we have these 10 geometrical shapes The shapes are blue and the frame is pink, where 8 of them are the regular plane figures. 2 of them are what you might call arc forms, a curved triangle, which doesn't come into plane geometry, space geometry, and the quatrefoil. Quatrefoil just means 4-leaved. It's a French word, comes from a French word, and it's a very pretty shape that has been used as an art form for many, many years. I think the shield is used a great deal in Europe because it was the shape of the knight's shield and always had a very spectacular device on it. Now that again lends itself to design. Now these shapes have been designed so that they will all inscribe into the largest circle. And that means they will combine to make very pleasant designs. See, the curved triangle just inscribed in the circle. The quatrefoil. I redesigned these about a couple of years ago because I found that worked so much better. Now that means they all bear a relationship to each other. The only one that does not is the parallelogram, which if I made it to fit the circle would really be too small to inscribe in the circle. They used to be made of metal, and if you go to some Montessori schools you'll see they still are made of metal. But I think where applicable, some of the newer materials should be used. Plastic didn't exist in Montessori's day, you see, when she first made these. But I think they are really nicer in plastic than in metal. If the child drops one, it doesn't chip. If you drop a triangle and it's in metal, you can't bend the corners, the angles. I think these will last better, and they're not so heavy, noisy to use. I'm very pleased with them. They're kept on 2 sloping frames, so they're easy for the child to help himself to the one he likes. He can look at them and choose, and they're very easily kept in the classroom. With these, we have colored paper cut to the exact size of the frame. So that is important. And we have colored pencils. So here's one box full. Now, if you are going to give the children anything, you must always give them the best that is on the market. With the little children, if you give them what is really beautiful, they appreciate it and take great care of it. And also, although the main purpose here is to learn to use a pencil in an interesting fashion, as with many of the exercises we do, there is also a secondary purpose. And here, as I go along, you will see that this also leads to an understanding of art. These geometrical shapes have been used in the art of every country, I think, these simple forms. And really right back from very early times. I think probably the earliest pattern we've found is one that was found in Central Europe, and it has an incised pattern that you see in this shape. And I think it's carbon dated about 50,000 years ago. Then you see we have the Mars d'Azil, which I think is 25,000 or 30,000. Our Madeleine, that's one of them is 30,000, one 25,000. You see years ago in Europe. So pattern was one, as soon as a man began to make any form of artifacts, he also began to make it beautiful. So he must always have had this aesthetic sense. It's amazing how soon he learned to make a pot almost immediately he begins to decorate it. Go to the British Museum, there's a pot like this, the lovely pattern all over it made with the fingernails covering the whole pot. It's a peculiarity of ours that we love to make things beautiful, and it must be one of the, it must be a characteristic almost from the beginning. So what we do is we give him squares of paper in many different colours. I think you'll find you can get this paper in something like 22 colours we can in England. See shades of grey, a very pale brown, as well as the pinks and yellows. And some children you will find prefer the grey or the brown. We all have different tastes. And then we can get them a very beautiful box of colours. See? There's one set that a box like this that's made in England, which is very good. The box I have here comes from Switzerland. But you see you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different greens, 5 different browns. See, pinks and reds. 5 different blues, grey, silver, white. You see? And they're so lovely that the child would want to use them. And unless you have really good things, you cannot create. See? Because they are so beautiful, the children take great care of them and always replace them, and if one is missing, they look for it. The first time I got a box like this for my classroom, the school didn't want me to have it because of the cost. And so I said, no, just give me the amount of money you always spend on crayons for my class. And at the end of the year, I'd actually spent less money. Because, you know, when you have all those ordinary ones, nobody takes much care of them. They get lost. The only thing is I don't let the children sharpen themselves. Because, you know, sometimes small children with one of those pencil sharpeners, they get carried away. And all they want to do is to go on sharpening and sharpening till there's nothing left. So I do always sharpen them myself. And in using these, you can see how their aesthetic sense would be educated, and it would lead them into real art and appreciation of beauty. Well, now the first exercise, for that we would take one piece of the paper and one of the frames and 2 contrasting colors. I take red and blue, any 2 contrasting colors. And I would first show the child how to cover the paper, being very oh, look at it around the edge. Oh, we can see a little paper there. Let's cover it up. Oh, yes. Do you see there's a little paper showing here? Let's move the frame. No, can't see any paper there. Look this side. Is there any paper? No? And what about the top? No. We can't help seeing the tiny bit at each corner because the corners here are rounded. It's a manufacturing problem. So when you have exactly covered the paper, then your shape will be centrally placed on the paper. It's not so important here, but it will be later on. Then you take one color and you draw around the shape. And then, of course, you have that shape transferred to the paper. You take your second pencil and you show the child to fill this in with nice straight lines going exactly from one side to the other. You lift your pencil each time, you see. And do these nice straight lines, so close together that you don't see any paper in between, going exactly from one side to the next. You fill in a small corner. Now, would you like to do that? You see? And you stay with him a minute. If he starts scribbling, you stop him. Because just by scribbling, you don't gain any skill. But by doing these very careful straight lines, you become really able to control your pencil. And very soon your pencil will do anything you want it to. Your hand will be under the control of the will. Okay. So forget about art for the moment. Just think that this is to gain skill. Now, children will vary a little bit, you see, and they may do their lines in different directions. Some will do them straight across, and they would each do them at a slightly different slant. That doesn't matter. You mustn't interfere there. And children are inclined to hold their paper at slightly different slants, just as all of you, when you're writing, hold your block at a different slant. You look, you see, look at that girl, how differently she holds her block to you. You see, quite a different slant. And it's because we have two eyes, and one is the dominant eye, and it depends on our own eyes as to the slant that suits our eyes. So unless the child is doing something very peculiar, like doing something like this, you leave him alone to decide on the slant that suits him and the direction in which he does his lines. The only thing is, you do show him to just do one stroke at a time. They are also a little bit inclined to get rather curved lines. Don't worry too much, you know. They're really trying very hard. Now, once the child knows how to do it, probably he is not very skillful. Sometimes they do these nice big lines that go right outside the paper. See, another child may do little lines that just fill the middle. Or they may do lines that are too far apart. You see? So from time to time, you can, before he starts, you don't interrupt him when he's concentrating, you could go down to his table and show him how to improve. You're always ready to give them ideas. See? Now those are very nice straight lines, but you see they are a little bit too long. Could you start at one side and go right across and stop as soon as you touch the other side? You see? Start here, go straight across, stop. Yeah, you show me. See? Or if he's doing short ones, you have to say the opposite. If he's doing them too far apart, could we get those lines so close together that we can't see any paper in between? See? So that you help him to improve with your suggestions and demonstrations. So as I say, you don't stop him when he's concentrating. It's better to begin with a lesson before he starts. Well, I have one or two. I have two here. See which have been done. This is a 4-year-old. Those two are my adult students, but that one is a 4-year-old child. You see, very nice straight lines for the most part, and then he's gone in a different direction there. Well, they will do a great many of these. It's something that appeals to most children, you see, and you can just see this improvement coming. Those are very nice straight lines, very close together. No, that's scribbling. I did say very definitely you teach him to pick the pencil up, and then each time he's finished a line, he picks his pencil up and starts again.
The pastel paper is helpful so that the design shows up more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
The pastel, lighter colored papers are better than the strong colors.
I think so, yes. I think they need to be pastel. Very hard to show up. In fact, they love the pale grey. They show up beautifully on that. They show up nicely on the white. But they do like colour, don't they? Now, when they are doing that pretty, achieving quite a good result. You then could show them a symmetrical pattern, and this would keep their interest going, so they would continue and do more of this work, and it would also be leading them into a knowledge of geometrical design. Let's try it on white. They could take any shape, most of the shapes lend themselves to these. Suppose we took the ellipse. And you would demonstrate to the child how to cover his paper, which he knows how to do. Take any pencil we like. Draw the shape. And for this one, it's a little different for the different ones. Some you have to rotate. The ellipse you have to turn it through an angle of 90 degrees. And you cover the paper again exactly. Draw your shape again with the same color. And that gives you a very simple geometrical design. See, you can't explain symmetry to small children, but this does enable them to get a symmetrical pattern. Now they can color this in different ways. They could do each of those shapes in one color and the center shape in a second. They could do the opposite pieces the same, or they could do all 5 pieces in different colors. So immediately you get quite a variety of possibilities. And here are some. See? There you see the opposite arms, green or yellow. And here, just 2 colors. And there's that is the pentagon. That's the quatrefoil. And that's one of the small children. Right. But they get a beautifully symmetrical pattern.
When you're showing them, you would just give them 2 colors of pencil.
For the very first one, they draw in one and color in the second. So they take 1 piece of paper, 2 pencils, and 1 shape. When it comes onto a pattern like this, they take 1 shape, 1 piece of paper, but they can take more colors.
And so you let the box, you let them...
They help themselves. The box is on the shelf. They help themselves to what they need. And you can always give them ideas, you know. You can say to a child, well, take the pencils that you think look nicest together. So that they begin to get this deliberate choice. You could do 1 or 2, the 3 variations of coloring this one very beautifully and put them on the wall. So, but I don't think you put up the children's patterns. You see, you might put up 3 of your own if you would do them as well as this. Leave them up 2 or 3 days, not longer. So the children, again, could see the possibilities.
Why wouldn't you put up the children's patterns?
Well, that'll take us a long time to discuss. So. I think you want to put up patterns that they're going to learn from. I much prefer them just to have a folder to put their work in than all this putting art all over the walls, since your room becomes a really restless room. You clutter up your wall with all this. You really get a room you can't work in. Now, the children could start this work, you see, around 4 years of age. And there's one more pattern you might show them by 5 years of age. And again is to, you take both the pink shape and the solid that fits into it. You cover the paper. For this again we need 2 colors. I've drawn a circle. And then we take the solid and cover that circle. I don't have my glasses for this, so I may not do it very well. And then you take the other color draw around the solid. And I don't know if you can see that you get a shape. You get the same circle twice. See, once just inside the other. Here's some that may show up better. Now, it's, you see, little children are quite fascinated by the fact that this hole, as it were, produces the same shape as this solid. You see, and sometimes they'll do many of these. It seems so obvious to us, but I mean, they haven't gone into these sort of abstract ideas. Now, they can fill it in or not as they like. Now, some of you, of course, don't get your children until 5 years of age. So maybe you don't get them until 6 and they write badly, or they don't write at all. And then these exercises are very good for them. In fact, I find at any age, if I have 11 and 12-year-olds or teenagers who write very badly, it isn't any help to keep telling them they write badly. That only is very discouraging, and you find they find themselves doing even worse, because especially children up to about 11, they do believe what they're told. The teacher says you write badly. Well, I do but nobody tells you what to do about it, you see. Well, first of all, you look at their writing, and probably they're making some letters in completely the wrong way, because the early training is so poor. Children learn to do an A by doing a circle and then a stick. But it doesn't matter in what direction they do that circle and then a stick. Well, if you learn to write that way, you can never learn to do the letter in the right way. See? And so they really need retraining in forming letters correctly. So you would give them show them how to, any letter they were misforming, you would show them how to form it correctly. Because if you do an A like that, how is it ever going to join on to another letter? It can't. So they probably go around like this, you see, when writing. So what I do is, first of all, I let them do this work, you see, and I show them the right way to do a letter. And then you do find through this work their skill with a pencil improves and their writing improves. Now, they wouldn't want to spend a long time doing some simple shapes. So there are a number of different patterns. You know, you would show them perhaps that simple pattern. And then you would begin letting them do more creative patterns. And for the children who had begun with you in the beginning, at 4 or 5 doing those 3 simple stages, they could go on to these more advanced stages, possibly as part of their artwork. So every now and then you would teach them another, sort of give them another idea in the creation of design. Now the ones I have here have been done by using, probably not this one, most of them have been used by using more than one shape. And you can combine shapes to get an infinite variety of very lovely patterns. What is so exciting is that no two people seem to do just the same pattern. Look at that lovely one. Just as no two countries, you look at the designs in Peru, the designs in India, the designs in Africa and England, they're all completely different, but they're using the same few basic shapes. That's a beautiful one. It becomes quite difficult to see which shapes are being used. That one, obviously, I think the quatrefoil and the parallelogram. Not sure how it's done. See? So the children begin to create most beautiful designs, and your older children love doing it. And in doing these, they can, of course, do the straight lines in different directions to get an effect. See, this will work on afterwards. But it's still these straight lines and gaining real skill with the pencil. So from that early beginning, you do lead into a real understanding of geometrical pattern. Now here we have suggested that they do a pattern which completely fills the paper. That's very lovely. Obviously that's a parallelogram. See what a different style each person has. That's a rectangle. This day it was suggested that they did a design and just took, say, all the shades of red. You can put all the shades of red on one table, all the shades of green on another. You see, and these are patterns done in shades of one color. I don't know if you can see that. It's moves. They're attractive, aren't they? It's a very strong one. That's a very pretty one. Now here we were giving different aspects of symmetry. You see, if you fold your paper in half, this half repeats that half. You see, that's that line, this side same as that side. It's like a mirror image. It's a simpler one. This side repeats that side. It's attractive. This one, you see, they have taken symmetry along the diagonal. On this side repeats that side. You could fold your paper like that and those quarters could repeat. But these are all what you call a mirror image. That side repeats that. So you give them, it leads into mathematics too. I mean, it's a mathematical foundation. It's all symmetrical art, you see. And it's very difficult to explain symmetry. But in doing these patterns, they begin to understand it. That's just a really attractive one. It's rather differently. Then, of course, we use patterns a great deal that are continuous. You would have a pattern that would go all around the hem of a dress. In India, they have these patterns that go all the way 6 yards along the edge of a sari. Some of you have knitting patterns. You see, your jersey is in bands. Come over here. And see? One of the Irish patterns. You see, the row of pattern would go on forever. She's got several different rows of pattern. You have on your jersey. Come over here and let's take a photograph of you. Now look at all those bands of pattern. So we can give them paper, and you see, by using one shape, you see, and moving it on at regular intervals for as long as you like, you could get one of these continuous patterns. Or when you have a little skill with it, you can use more than one shape. That's a very simple one, you see, done with a quatrefoil. That is a very simple one. It's done with a pentagon. Very, very pleasant, though. It's that one's done with the ellipse. That's a rectangle. You can give them longer pieces if they like to. That's very attractive. It's nice, isn't it? That's lovely. It's just a circle. To think how that one's done, don't you? And again, just hundreds of variations, and no two people seem to produce the same thing. That one's very pretty. Now, we also want the child to become very aware of his environment, because when you observe your environment with intelligence, you see, then you do build up this knowledge. And so very simply at first, your 4 to 5-year-olds, you might get them to look at their own clothes. You see, and in most groups you will have pattern used, especially in weaving patterns, you see, because the weave you just can go across and down, and you get many patterns with squares, rectangles. You see, like your coat. That coat there is your coat. It's a pattern involving squares and rectangles. And so you would look at the children's clothes, and we looked at your jersey, we looked at your knitting pattern. And these designs have been used for, I think, just everything that man has created. You come into Europe, you visit our great cathedrals and churches, and you get these carved patterns everywhere. So you go to Thailand, and you go to their temples, and the whole wall is covered with these elaborate patterns. And there they're very strong colours, scarlets and gold, and picked out with mirrors so that they glitter even more. You go to Africa, you get these patterns made with tiny beads. You see. And some of our patterns are 4,000 or 5,000 years old. There's a tomb in Ireland where the patterns are a marvelous tomb. They've created a whole hill with this great tomb inside, and there are these patterns carved on the stones. But of course they didn't have iron tools for the age. When you come to Europe, you see these things dating back a long time. A country like India, the designs are prolific everywhere. We also, you can take them right back to the earliest ones through history. But you can look at a pattern when you've seen a few and you'd say, oh, I'm sure that's an Indian design, or that comes from Thailand, or that's a Japanese one. See? And we think we can really trace the movements of early people by that pattern. You see, the Norwegians knitted these sweaters in very bright colours, you must know them, with geometrical designs all over them. Now they went and inhabited the Shetland Islands off the north of Scotland. But for a very long time that has been the second main, they have two main industries. One is when the fishing fleets catch the herring, they follow the fleets and the herrings are cleaned and made into smoked fish, or two different kinds, bloaters or herrings, kippers. We eat them a lot in the smoked form. And the rest of the year, when there's no fishing, they sit and knit in their cottages, these very elaborate patterns. And now they're done by machine, but the really knitted ones are very much nicer. And that is one of their major sources of money. But they were people who were settled from Norway, so the patterns are the same, although they use a rather different colouring. Now if you go down to Peru, you find them knitting the same patterns. But there the patterns would be rather different colouring because they knit with llama wool and they have different shades of brown and natural. But it is thought that possibly the Norwegians, we know they got over to North America. We think they may have got down to Peru. So, and that tomb I was speaking of in Ireland, we know that was made by people who came from a certain part of the Mediterranean because of the pattern. So it's all very interesting to just do a little of this work with the children. So begin to look at the things in the environment, the curtain materials, the patterns on plates, the patterns on their own clothes. Get them to look through magazines, and you will find that the kitchens are tiled with these tiles of definite patterns. And much of the modern jewellery is made with geometrical design and so on. And then bring in the art of different countries. Look at the early Italian masterpieces, and nearly always there's some geometrical design in the carpets or the clothes, the artifacts. At one time, before they began to do landscape, you would have a figure and the background would be filled in with geometrical pattern. It's a very nice one of the French three kings riding out. The French king was one of them, on horseback with all those trappings, and the whole background is a pattern. See, and then later they began to do landscape instead as a background. So it can lead on to the children looking at art with a more knowledgeable eye. And you must give them these very beautiful books on art. Teach them to use them properly. Never let them have a book unless they're sitting at a table. You teach them to turn the pages properly. And they can look at these, give them these really great masterpieces so that what they look at is worth looking at. You can get them interested in history this way, in art, and you can make them appreciative of other countries, which is very important. You see, by showing them also the art of other countries. I suppose the people who have used art, the geometrical pattern, the most are the Islamic people. They spread from the Middle East right across, they conquered northern Africa, southern Europe, it got down to northern Rhodesia, northern India. It wasn't a race, it was a creed. They weren't allowed to use a human form, and so they went very much there. Their writing is used as an art form, and they went very much into geometrical pattern, and they have the most wonderful buildings covered with most elaborate designs. Now, there's a very lovely book that's been printed which shows how the geometry behind the patterns. So that you'll have this page with a gorgeous pattern, and then up at the top, the way they arrived at the pattern geometrically. And of course the workmen created those patterns. They only had a ruler and a piece of string. For the Taj Mahal in India, which is one of the most beautiful things in the world, you see, was the Islamic people. Beautiful patterns. You could show them pictures of these lovely buildings, the Alhambra in Spain, the mosques of Turkey. As I say, the Taj Mahal, which is hundreds of different patterns. And this particular book, I took it into the classroom for the 5-year-olds, and there was one little boy who was just 5, and his great joy was every day he took this book to rest time, and he loved studying the geometrical construction along the top of the page. Don't know what it meant to him, but he was fascinated with it. So this, from starting as an exercise to get skill with a pencil, can lead into a study of design, appreciation of art, our own and other people's, and it has a mathematical basis which leads you into math. All right, now I hope you're going to produce